we learn that Mother Earth is capable of things we never thought possible. As science has progressed, we start to get a better glimpse into the ever-elusive universe surrounding us. These recent discoveries will remind you not only of the power of nature, but our human potential to understand it. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at interesting discoveries and the facts behind them. Bigfoot encounter at Ape Canyon. Ape Canyon is located to the northeast of Mount St. Helens in Washington state. The canyon acquired its name as a result of one of the most famous Bigfoot attacks in history. The attack happened on a summer's night in 1924 when a group of 5 miners who were staying in a cabin came under attack by a group of ape men that were positioned on the ridges above. All 5 of the miners survived the attack and would go on to tell the same story of what had happened that night to the local news outlets. The miners claimed that before the attack started, they were all asleep in the cabin that they had built by hand. As they slept, a flurry of large rocks began to rain down on the camp from all sides. The miners took up arms and began to fire back at the beasts. At first, this helped suppress the attacks, only to begin again a few moments later. One of the miners recalled the moment when one of the beasts came close to the cabin and tried to reach through a hole in the structure in an attempt to grab an axe, but it was repelled before it had time to retrieve it from the building. As the siege continued until daybreak, the miners were able to gradually break free from the cabin as one of the men, named Fred Beck, claimed he saw one of the creatures standing in the distance. He took aim at the creature and pulled the trigger, watching as it tumbled down into the gorge below. Fred Beck later wrote a book detailing the siege that he and his fellow miners experienced that night, but in the book he makes the claim that the creatures were actually extra-dimensional beings. Despite numerous theories, the store is enough to attract thousands of hikers to the spot each year, although the original cabin is no longer there and the surrounding area was changed due to the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980. Bennington Triangle. The Bennington Triangle is located in the state of Vermont in the United States. It's sometimes also referred to as the Triangle of Doom and has long been known for its mysterious activity. Whilst the borders of the triangle are not specific, the triangle is centered around Glastonbury Mountain in Vermont. Vermont has been a place where UFO sightings have occurred, among other paranormal activities. The most concerning mystery is the missing people. The bizarre disappearances are unexplained and have been happening since the colonial days. The most noteworthy disappearances happened between 1945 and 1950, and people started to take note. In 1945, a 74-year-old hunter named Middy Rivers went missing while on the trail with 3 other people. After a long day out in the woods, they proceeded to head back, and Rivers was at the front of the group. Suddenly, he disappeared before their eyes. As an experienced hunter for many years, his friends and the authorities had trouble understanding what could have happened. The second disappearance happened just a year later, but this time it was a young woman of 18 years old named Paula Weldon. She went on a hike, alone, around 4 p.m. after work, where many other hikers saw her along the trail. She never returned home that night, and a missing persons case was opened soon after. Not a single trace of her was found, and her disappearance still remains a mystery today. 3 years to the day of Paula Weldon's disappearance, another disappearance took place. James E. Tedford was leaving Vermont and on a bus towards Bennington along with 14 other passengers. He was seen sleeping 1 second and then the next, he vanished before their eyes. It made no sense as the bus was moving and hadn't come to a stop, yet he was gone. He had also left behind his luggage, wallet, and everything else that was with him on the bus. Tedford was never seen again, and news of the Bennington Triangle began to grow. There were 2 other mysterious disappearances that took place in 1950 in the Bennington Triangle that remain unsolved. Of course, people have tried to make sense of these horrifying incidents and questioned if these were linked to someone doing this. Unfortunately, there wasn't much of a pattern to go off when comparing the 5 cases, so it stopped that theory in its tracks. With so many disappearances lacking an explanation, the Bennington Triangle is one of the last places you'd want to visit. Ruthann Ruppert, Yosemite National Park. Ruthann Ruppert is another case of hike turned into tragedy. She was last seen on August 14, 2000, in the Curry Village area of Yosemite National Park at noon. She had originally planned to join a group backpacking in the park, but an eye infection that sent her to Yosemite Valley Medical Clinic also caused her to fall behind the group. Undeterred from adventure, she is believed to have attempted a solo day hike from Yosemite Falls to the Forester area. Ruppert was confident in the park, having made 2 trips previously. In general, she is known as a highly experienced backpacker, even making it to the top of Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro with a frozen foot. The hike she originally planned to do before the group moved on without her was a 30-mile trip in the backcountry that takes 7 days. The strange part of her decision to explore her own path was that she only took a sweater and minimal other necessities. She did not contact any friends or family about where she planned to go or where she would return. Evidence relating to her disappearance was not found until 2008, 8 years later, when her backpack was uncovered in the Fireplace Creek drainage. This location is along her presumed hiking route, but nothing else has ever been found. Her family has made statements to suggest that Ruppert does not match the profile of a runaway and that they suspect foul play. To this day, no one is quite sure where Ruppert is, if she is alive, why she took on a new route, and why she did not take proper supplies. Clearly, national parks are not always the spirited paradises they're told to be. It seems some spots are more dangerous than others. Yosemite, which features in 2 of these cases, accounts for about a quarter of the money the National Park Service spent on search and rescue. Hopefully, these stories don't discourage you from adventure, but remind you to always be prepared. The disappearance of Renee McCrae. The disappearance of Renee McCrae and her 3-year-old son Andrew in 1976 is Britain's longest-running missing persons case. On Friday, the 12th of November 1976, Renee had dropped her eldest son at her estranged husband's house and had then driven towards Kilmarnock, apparently to visit her sister. After turning onto the A9 highway, she was never to be seen again. That night, 12 miles from her last known sighting, McCrae's BMW car was found on fire, empty. Police initiated an intensive search operation for McCrae and her son, but failed to find any significant trace of the pair. The only piece of notable evidence discovered was blood on a charred rug in the BMW, matching the DNA of Renee McCrae. Some witnesses alleged that they had seen a man dragging a sheepskin object near the car, with others saying that they had seen a man pushing a pushchair by a nearby quarry. Coincidentally, McCrae had been wearing a sheepskin coat that day. However, neither of these leads were thoroughly investigated. As the case unraveled, it became clear that McCrae's personal life was more complicated than it appeared on the surface. McCrae had been having an affair with a man named Bill McDowell, an employee of her husband Gordon McCrae. The only person aware of the affair was Renee's best friend, Valerie Steventon. Steventon told the authorities that Renee had actually been heading to Perthshire to visit McDowell on the night of her disappearance. She also revealed another stunning revelation, the turning point which added to the complex nature of the case. Bill McDowell was Andrew McCrae's biological father. Investigators now had good reason to believe that McCrae's presumed murderer was quite literally someone a little closer to home. Authorities began to believe that McCrae and her son may have been murdered and buried under the A9 road, which was undergoing construction work at the time. A farmer with supposed divining skills claimed that the bodies lay 12 feet underneath the road and marked this location with a yellow circle. Although Scottish police later announced that the bodies were not buried under the road, not everyone was convinced. A friend of an officer named Sandy Taylor claimed the officer had spoken to a foreman about a man digging up a section of the road on the day of the disappearance and had shown this man the evidence. The officer was instantly sure that this man knew far more than he was willing to tell. Suspiciously, the man fled to the US soon after. According to senior officials, Renee and Andrew McRae's case was mired in a sea of deceit and untruthfulness from its start. However, 2019 saw what may turn out to finally be closure for the McRae family, when Bill McDowell was charged with their murder and with attempting to deceive the course of justice. The Banshee of Dunluce Castle. Perched atop an outcrop of rocks overlooking the ocean in Northern Ireland is Dunluce Castle. Even though it stands mostly in ruins, it remains one of the most iconic and beloved castles of Ireland. There have been tales of ghosts and hauntings for centuries, as the site has always held spiritual and tactical influence throughout the area. Local legends even tell of an entire kitchen falling off the castle onto the rocks below. Other tales of the castle include treasure hidden in the caves below the castle, mermaids luring sailors to their death, and many executions held on the southeast tower. The castle, which served as the seat of the Clan MacDonald, was first occupied by the McFarlane family in the 1500s. Although many people lost their lives falling from the craggy pinnacle, there is one death that seems to echo the halls of the castle to this day: the Banshee of Dunluce Castle. Banshees are female spirits of Irish lore. These spirits are said to herald the death of a family member, their presence usually accompanied by painful wails and sorrow for their loved ones. This particular spirit is said to be the ghost of Maeve Rowe. Maeve was the only daughter of Lord McFarlane. Lord McFarlane was a stern nobleman, and his daughter was a woman who had her own ideals. After falling in love with an officer in her father's army, Maeve is banished to a tower in the castle. McFarlane would not have his daughter marry a lowly officer and disgrace the family, so he simply locked her away. O'Kane came to Maeve's rescue. In a brave and maybe foolish manner, he climbed the tower and carried Maeve down to safety. That safety didn't last long, however. Together, they stole a small rowboat and attempted an escape out to sea. The couple did not make it far. That night, a storm came in quickly and violently, easily tossing the boat against the sharp, jagged rocks below the castle. The story of the Banshee of Dunluce Castle almost plays out like a fairy tale. A damsel being locked in a tower and a heroic rescue, but this tale ends in tragedy. The body of Maeve was never recovered, but part of her will always remain at the castle. On dark, stormy nights, visitors tell of Maeve's sorrowful wails echoing the rocky halls. Having never gotten the escape and life she longed for, she cries out for her loss. But what do you make of these discoveries? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comments section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.